Doug Fischer's with the Ring TV. You can find him on the internet. You can also go to twitter.com/Dougie Fischer, Fischer, to get his tweets. You can also find the Ring TV on Twitter as well as on Facebook. And you can go to their website as well. Doug Fischer joined me to talk about some boxing. We talked about the cancellation of Amir Khan and Lamont Peterson. What's next for Khan? We also talked about Mayweather-Cotto. What's next for Mayweather? And when Pacquiao and Mayweather are done, who slides into that must-see draw? It's Doug Fischer on the Sports Buffet Podcast.
Always a treat to catch up with Doug Fischer, Ring TV, on the Sports Buffet Podcast. And Doug always brings us up to date on the latest in boxing as well as his opinions. Doug, let's start with the fight that was going to happen next week, but now is not going to happen, with Amir Khan and Lamont Peterson. Peterson, who I believe was the one that kind of called for the drug testing, actually kind of fails the drug testing. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, he did. He failed it, but you could also say he kind of failed it because if it wasn't VADA, the Voluntary Anti-Doping Agency, I think that's the name of the organization headed up by Dr. Margaret Goodman. If they weren't testing him, he would have passed. If it was WADA or USADA, the other two anti-doping agencies that are used, They employ the so-called Olympic-style drug testing, where they test urine and blood, and they test for all kind of stuff. They test for all sort of different hormonal levels, not just your standard performance-enhancing drugs. He would have passed. His testosterone level would not have tipped anything off, but under VADA's, it did tip something off, and it was. I think 3 times higher than your normal male who is Peterson's age. Peterson's like late 20s, early 30s. So he failed the drug test, and the fight was it wasn't canceled just because he failed the drug test. It was canceled because he's not licensed in the state of Nevada, and because of this, because he took these testosterone pellets last November for his first fight with Amir Khan, which he won narrowly, but he won, and controversially. The Nevada State Commission had a problem with licensing him, and he needed to state his case before the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and they were not able to put that special hearing together until May 15th. Which is the week of the fight. It's kind of like, and still they don't know if Golden Boy Promotions, which was the lead promoter and whom represents Amir Khan, they didn't know if Peterson was going to be licensed or not next week. So it would have been crazy to have everybody go out there to Las Vegas and organize a huge fight, and people are flying in from the UK to be there to support Khan. I think they had something like 4,000 tickets already sold. It would have been a huge disaster for this fight to be abruptly called off the week of the fight. So they just canceled it. They weren't anticipating that the commission would license him regardless, but they didn't want to wait for a special hearing next week. So Peterson messed up. I'm not saying he messed up because he had the testosterone pellets. Maybe he had a good medical reason, and he says it was medical. It was a medical reason. He had low testosterone. He had been feeling sluggish and unfocused and chronic fatigue and all that kind of stuff. And so he had this treatment done, and it was supposed to just help his regular life, not be a performance enhancer. However, he has not been forthright in saying, well, what is the medical condition? What's the reason for his testosterone being so low? To me, that's the real question in this whole debacle, Bob, is that why would a young man, a young professional athlete, a young combat athlete like Lamont Peterson have such low levels of testosterone? There has to be a reason, and typically it's folks who abuse steroids for a period of time. Their body stops producing certain hormones, including testosterone. And then if they're going to have normal testosterone levels after they come off these steroid cycles, it has to be artificial. That's not the only reason somebody under the age of 50 would have low testosterone. I've had low testosterone in the past because I've had a thyroid condition.
Right.
I had hypothyroidism. I had low thyroid, and as a result, I had low testosterone. You know, I didn't get any testosterone treatments because I'm not a professional athlete, and whatever. I'm old anyways. I'm in my 40s. I don't care. You know.
Where does this? Go ahead.
You know, but my whole thing is, if he had a medical reason, he said, "Hey, I had hypo," and he could prove it. Like had a doctor's diagnosis that I had hypothyroidism in whatever early 2011, and that affected my testosterone levels. And I went to a doctor, and this is what the doctor suggested. I can see it, and still, he would have had to have notified the promoters, and he should have let VADA know prior to the testing that he had a medical condition. He never did that, and after he failed the test and failed the B test, the follow-up test. He didn't notify Golden Boy Promotions. He didn't notify so that something could have been done to somehow work something out contractually or to somehow salvage this event. So, I mean, I'm not saying Lamont Peterson is a performance-enhancing drug abuser or a cheater. People are very impulsive with their judgments these days in this social media age, and I don't want to be a part of that. But I will say, Peterson messed up. He didn't act in a professional manner. He's the one, it was his team that demanded the VADA testing, and they know in this day and age, this climate, if you have something like testosterone replacement or testosterone pellets, that is seen as cheating in many sports. You know, it's a huge issue right now with mixed martial arts. I mean, there's been all kind of hearings and controversy over a number of very high-profile MMA fighters. So he knew that there was a climate to where you're going to be suspected if you have any sort of elevated levels of testosterone or if you've ever had any kind of medical testosterone treatment. And he did, and he should have been forthright with that. He should have been out with that, and he wasn't.
Where does this leave Khan?
It leaves him without a dance partner in the month of May.
Right.
It means he's been training his ass off in the Philippines and in Los Angeles for nothing. He got his body ready to peak that week of May 19th, and now it's going to go to waste because he does not have a dance partner. They can't find a replacement in time to make that HBO date, so he's not fighting on May 19th, and he's, the earliest he will be able to be rescheduled is late June or sometime in the month of July, and that's what his team and Golden Boy Promotions is working on right now as we speak.
Who would you see?
Don't have a partner for him.
Yeah, who would you see as a potential partner for him?
Devon Alexander would be pretty good.
Right.
Alexander looked really good in his welterweight debut. We all know that Amir Khan has eyes on moving up to the welterweight division. So they are two former, partially unified junior welterweight champs going up in weight to fight at 147. And I think the winner of that can really claim to be a top 10 welterweight contender. And if they are looking at fighting for a welterweight title or fighting the winner of the Berto Ortiz rematch or maybe one day fighting a Manny Pacquiao or a Floyd Mayweather, they should fight each other. They should really prove that they're not just talented 140-pounders who stepped up to the welterweight division. They should fight each other at welterweight to determine who is really a bona fide welterweight contender. So I think Alexander is simple. I mean, he fought in February, so he's recovered from that fight. He can go. I know Devon trains all the time, so I know he's in shape, and he can jump into camp on a minute's notice and be ready to fight in late June or July. And they're both promoted by Golden Boy Promotions, so there's none of that kind of crap to get in the way of that fight being made.
I was going to say, that makes it real easy. Now, let me ask one question here. Let's say Floyd is going to fight 5 more times before hanging it up. I think that's probably a high number or a low number, depending. Is Amir Khan one of those opponents, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Amir Khan is somebody that... on Khan's side, and Freddie Roach, who trains Khan, they think that Khan has a style that is really difficult for boxers, for technicians, for counterpunchers. He just said his style is the poison for Khan's style are pressure fighters, rugged pressure fighters who can bang, who are going to get in there and crack them on the jaw the way Maidana did. But boxers, technicians, guys, like Zab Judah, guys who operate up from a distance, you know, guys who are just fast with timing, guys like Paulie Malignaggi and Zab Judah, and the guy from the Ukraine that he beat for his first title, Andreas Kotelnik. Those guys, he has poison for their styles. Now, Mayweather is a much higher class than those three guys that I mentioned. However, Mayweather's getting old.
Right.
You know, so I mean, from Khan's side, they look at Mayweather like, man, we could become instant legends by beating this guy. And Mayweather, you know, there's not a lot of notable opponents. There aren't a lot of worthy challengers for him. Personally, the only two guys that I think are really worthy of getting in the ring and competing with Mayweather is Manny Pacquiao and Sergio Martinez. Manny Pacquiao, for reasons that the whole boxing world has gone over a million times, doesn't look like that fight's going to happen. There's too many egos involved, too many rivals, too much disrespect and hatred between the major parties of making that fight for that fight to happen anytime soon anyways. And Sergio Martinez, he's just dangerous. But he's not like a pay-per-view type guy. It's not like he brings this huge, he doesn't bring a lot of revenue, doesn't bring a huge audience to a Mayweather showdown. Amir Khan, however, he brings the UK. He's not a household name in the U.S., but he brings UK money. He brings UK television. He brings a UK audience to an international event. So in that respect, he's a little bit more marketable than, say, Sergio Martinez, although I would say Sergio Martinez would have a much better chance at actually defeating Floyd Mayweather than Amir Khan.
Let's kind of get into Floyd and Cotto. First off, though, if you saw 4 or 5 more opponents for Floyd, who do you realistically think they are? And could you see another pay-per-view to where if Floyd and Canelo are not fighting each other, they could team up? Because I've got to think when the numbers come out, that's going to be a huge number.
Yeah, Canelo helps. Yeah, Canelo helps this pay-per-view event, but Cotto helps. I mean, Mayweather automatically brings, 800,000 to 1 million pay-per-view buys just on his name and his whole shtick. But Cotto brings a lot. Cotto brings 500,000 because he is a Puerto Rican star. I mean, he brings out the East Coast. He brings out Puerto Rican fans.
Would you say he's a solid number 3 in the pay-per-view draw right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say behind it's Floyd and Pacquiao up at the top 2, and then it's got to be Cotto. I mean, he's not a million pay-per-view guy, but you match him with the right guy, and he's 500,000. He's 500,000 to 700,000, and that makes him a super pay-per-view B-side. I don't think there's a stronger pay-per-view B-side out there right now than Miguel Cotto. But somebody who I think will eventually become a very strong pay-per-view B-side is Canelo Alvarez.
Right.
He's fought on major pay-per-views before. He fought on the undercard of the Mayweather-Ortiz pay-per-view.
Right.
And on the undercard of the Mayweather-Mosley pay-per-view. He does really good HBO rankings. We all know he sells tickets. He's Mexican, you know? And he, for years he's been fighting on free Mexican network television. So he brings the fans in. So he's definitely, I mean, if Mayweather fights 4 or 5 more times, I know Canelo's going to be one of those opponents. But until that fight happens, Alvarez is going to be on the undercard.
Yeah, I could see it being a Canelo, a Khan, maybe a Berto. I mean, is Berto managed by Al Heyman?
Yeah, he is.
And let me guess, Al Heyman fighters normally don't fight each other?
They normally do not fight each other.
So I guess scratch that. But I think if Floyd beat Martinez, if he got in with Martinez and beat him, that's a major feather to me for a boxing
if he did
fan.
That, and that would be just stupendous. Unless he got Martinez to come all the way down to 150, weight where we know Martinez hasn't made in 10 to 12 years, then I don't know. Because at his age, 37, losing that much weight, coming down that light, I don't know. I think that would mess him up. But let's say they meet at a catch weight that's reasonable, like junior middleweight, where Mayweather currently holds the belt. He won Cotto's title this past Saturday. If he would have beat Sergio Martinez at 154 pounds, or God forbid, even over 154 pounds, that would really be impressive. I would concede that this guy is a great fighter, because I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think his accomplishments are undeniable. I think his talent. I think everyone knows he has all-time great skill / talent / technique all rolled into one. He's got that kind of talent to where he could have conceivably competed in any era. But his character, it's not like that great fighter. I mean, for me, to be a great fighter, you have to show great character, which means you want to leave no doubt that you're the absolute best in whatever division that you occupy.
Play it out.
Out challenges. And he hasn't really done that. Like
right.
Bernard Hopkins did that. And I look at Bernard Hopkins as an all-time great. And then there's other guys I look at, they have great talent, like a Roy Jones Jr., athletic ability, or like a James Toney, who had that throwback mentality and that throwback style, and they're natural fighters. They're not like natural athletes, but they're natural fighters. But then Tony lacked the discipline outside of the ring. Tony didn't have the discipline that Roy Jones Jr. and Floyd Mayweather had, but he did have that mentality where he really wanted to prove that he was the best, and he challenged himself. But he was often out of shape and didn't really live up to his ability. So I can't look at Jones, Mayweather, or even James Toney, who I have a lot of respect for. I don't look at those guys as great fighters because they didn't show the character that a great fighter shows. Somebody like a Sugar Ray Leonard.
And James Toney.
But I tell you what, if Mayweather would have if he were to fight Martinez and beat Martinez, I might have to back off that stance. I might have to give the guy his due.
And James Toney and Roy Jones definitely need to stop right now, in my opinion. But
oh my God, they've got to stop. All these guys. I think it was sad. A month or two ago, I was ringside for Eric Morales' fight with Danny Garcia, and I picked Morales to win that fight because I knew he knew how to beat Danny Garcia, and if his body were maybe 2 or 3 years younger, he would have beat the hell out of Garcia. But at 35, and with all the wars he's had, and the various manners in which he's abused his body over the decades, he just didn't have it. His body couldn't execute what his intelligence and his will wanted to achieve in the ring. And it's sad, and it's frustrating, but in a way, these guys have to lose fights the way Mosley lost against Canelo this past Saturday, and the way Morales looked against Danny Garcia. It's like, dude, you got to get out of here. I think it's time for the old guard who really can't back it up anymore in the ring. I'm not saying just because you're old doesn't mean you deserve to be fighting, because, Antonio Tarver's 43 years old, but I think he's a very well-preserved 43.
Right.
And as long as he can prove it against world-class opposition, I'm happy to have Antonio Tarver around. But when it gets to the point where you can't beat guys you would have defeated 4 or 5 years ago, and you're really not able to kick ass on the world-class scene, I think it's time to go. And I think Hopkins, who I just said, I think Hopkins is not just a Hall of Fame. I think he's an all-time great. I think Hopkins, Mosley, Holyfield, James Toney, Roy Jones. It's just time for these guys to go. It really is. We need new blood in boxing.
Mayweather, I had him winning, I think, maybe 9 rounds to 3, 8 rounds to 4, but it wasn't a blowout.
I had it down to 4.
I thought Cotto fought great.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say, I thought Cotto fought great, and, I have a friend who I've gotten into boxing around here, and we talked about the fight, and I thought going in, Cotto would give Mayweather a much tougher time than I think Bradley will give Pacquiao. And I thought I looked great.
With that.
So go ahead.
I agree with that, yeah. And, so it's interesting because there's 2 ways to look at Mayweather's victory over Cotto. In one respect, you could say, man, this might be one of Floyd's best performances. Part of that is that he was actually in an entertaining fight. It was exciting at parts. But, you look at it on paper, Cotto was the number 1 rated, at least according to Ring Magazine, the number 1 rated junior middleweight in the world. He had a junior middleweight title, the WBA belt. And Floyd, in only his second fight, his second time fighting in that weight class, stepped up in welterweight and defeated him. I thought he defeated himself. I didn't think it was the decision was. I didn't like that 118-110 scorecard.
No, I thought that was a little much too.
I didn't think 117-111 was out of line. I saw it a little bit closer. I had it 116-112. But still, that's a clear decision victory for Mayweather. And he just beat a solid guy, a really good, experienced, world-class fighter. But on the flip side, if you would have read the articles that were written and what was being said about Miguel Cotto going into this fight, I mean, odds makers had him like a 5-1 underdog, anywhere from a 5-1 to a 7-1 underdog, and most boxing insiders agreed with that. And I think Lynn Satterfield did a poll of so-called boxing experts on ringtv.com prior to the fight, and he talked to 24 people. And out of that 24, only one person, and that was Paulie Malignaggi, because he fought Cotto, picked Cotto to win that fight. And I would say at least half of the folks who were picking Mayweather to win thought that Mayweather would dominate, would win all 12 rounds, or stop him, knock him out by the late rounds of that fight. And that was because the perception of Cotto was that he was a spin bullet, that either he just didn't have anything left after the two brutal losses to Manny Pacquiao and Antonio Margarito, or that he just never had the talent or the skill to compete with Floyd Mayweather. So in that, if you look at it that way, then maybe Mayweather underperformed.
Would it have been a better fight if they had fought 5 or 6 years ago?
I'm of the opinion no. Even though Cotto was stronger and probably more confident because he was younger and undefeated, I thought style-wise Cotto was wide open for the jab, the uppercut, and the left hook. He was still open for the jab and the uppercut in this fight, but not as much as he used to. He used to square up directly in front of his opponent and kind of stick his jaw out there, and everybody was able to nail him with uppercuts. So technically speaking, from a technical standpoint, I don't think he was in Mayweather's class, but there have been, in the last 3 bouts leading in to the Mayweather showdown, he had 2 camps with Emmanuel Stewart, who corrected his stance and got him to work his jab a lot better, straightened up his punches a little bit, and his recent coach, his current coach, Pedro Diaz, the guy that he had for the Margarito rematch and for the Mayweather fight, I think he kind of helped him out with his conditioning and his overall coordination. He looked much more able on his feet and had some upper body movement, and he showed that in the fight. I mean, he didn't just put hands on Mayweather. He made Mayweather miss. Mayweather had a hard time landing clean punches on Miguel Cotto and didn't hurt him until the very last round. I think, according to CompuBox, Mayweather only connected on 26% of his total punches. That has got to be an all-time low for Mayweather. Now, you either credit Miguel Cotto for being able to make a superb boxer like Mayweather miss so much, or you could say, hey, inactivity and age, being 35 years old, it's catching up with Mayweather. He's slowing down a little bit, and from henceforth, his fights are going to be tougher if he's fighting truly world-class fighters like Miguel Cotto.
I love talking to you, Doug, because you make me feel smart when I agree with you. I totally agree with every word you just said. And I honestly thought it was one of Mayweather's better performances in terms of relative to the opposition in quite a while. But anyway, let's touch on a few more topics before we get out of here. Like you mentioned, I think Shane Mosley put the gloves up now. Shane, this is getting it's past the point of
hard to watch.
Competitive.
It's hard to watch, and it's sad. Yes. And you can make excuses for Mosley when he gets blown out by a Manny Pacquiao or, dominated by a Floyd Mayweather. But when, Sergio Mora is holding you to a draw, and I actually thought Mora won that fight, and Canelo Alvarez is not just dominating you on points, but beating you up and really hurting you.
Right.
And then Shane's a proud, super tough guy. He couldn't hide it. I mean, those body shots that Canelo was landing late in that fight, man, that was really hard to watch. I didn't, you just don't want to see that happen over and over again. I don't want to see Shane get turned into a gatekeeper for prospects for summers.
Yeah, it'd be like if you're a Yankees fan, you don't want to see Mariano Rivera get out there and just get shelled in the ninth inning every time. So, what's next for Canelo? I know there's talk about Kirkland. I would love to see Cotto. I think Canelo and Kirkland would be a war, but I don't think it's going to last very long.
Huge event, by the way. Canelo-Cotto would be huge because you had the Mexico-Puerto Rico rivalry. You got a guy who's a bona fide ticket seller and ratings getter on the West Coast against a guy who's a bona fide ticket seller and ratings getter on the East Coast. So you have the entire continental U.S. just all up and you know. And by the way, two guys who are legitimate top 5 junior middleweights, two guys with exciting styles. You wouldn't have a hard time promoting this fight and making it into a big event. It would sell out. The Staples Center would sell out MGM Grand in Las Vegas. It would sell out Madison Square Garden. You could probably hold it in certain stadiums, and it would do tremendous. It would do 30 to 35,000. You know, if the tickets are priced right. So it's a huge event. I don't know if Canelo is quite ready for Cotto. I don't think Cotto took a beating in this Mayweather fight, and I think he still has a little too much seasoning. He's a little too mature for Canelo, but it would be a good fight. I think Canelo goes for. He's supposed to headline a Mexican Independence Week pay-per-view event in September. That's Golden Boy's plan. I think Kirkland is a great B-side because he's an all-action fighter. He's going to bring it, and you know, people know who hardcore fans know who Kirkland is, and if casual fans see any clips of Kirkland, they're going to be interested because he's a crazy hurricane.
Yeah, I just don't see Kirkland winning that fight whatsoever. I think Canelo.
No. Canelo has too much skill for him.
Right.
And he's too smart. He's too smart. You know, he's an entertaining fighter, and when he gets a guy hurt, he generally puts him away. But he's not reckless by any means.
What about Canelo and Judah at a catch?
Judah's been campaigning at 140 pounds these days, and that's still good at that weight. So there's just he's just too small.
Too much of a catch then.
For Canelo. Yeah, Canelo walks around at a solid 170.
Right.
He's real, and he's in shape. He's not fat in between fights. I think he's a little bit too big, and I know Zab looked good in his last fight, but I mean, he beat like a prospect. He didn't. It's not like he's
right.
People are really sure that Zab is still on that world-class level.
But Zab likes the money.
Way he went out against Khan. Yeah. I think if it's not Kirkland, I think Golden Boy won a purse bid for an IBF junior middleweight title fight between belt holder Cornelius Bundridge and Corey Spinks.
Right.
That's a rematch, and they're sticking that on the undercard, I think, of one of their shows in July. It might be the what's that guy's name from San Jose? The Ghost Guerrero,
yeah.
Robert Guerrero, his welterweight fight. I think they're going to stick it on the undercard there. So obviously they have an interest. I don't think they bought that fight because they think that Bundridge and Spinks are going to make a great fight.
Right.
I think they're interested in that title. They're interested in that IBF 154-pound title that K9 Bundridge holds. So I think they're looking at him, if he beats Spinks, as a potential B-side for Canelo. So, that way Canelo is, partially unifying 154-pound titles and fighting a guy who has an entertaining style. Bundridge is an athletic fighter with a big right hand, but a guy who's proven to be chinny in the past, just like James Kirkland. So I think they're looking at him. I think if it's not Kirkland, if Kirkland's shoulder is a rehab, if he's not ready to go in September, I think it'll be Cornelius Bundridge if K9 Bundridge defeats Corey Spinks again.
Could you ever see a Canelo-Sergio fight?
Oh, Sergio Martinez, Jesus, they would be, man. They would be crazy to do that.
Well,
I'm of the opinion that Sergio is just a beast, just a stud. And I know, people in the Twitterverse, have been disrespecting him lately. They weren't impressed with his fight against Macklin, at least not over the first half of the fight, or his fight against Darren Barker. But Macklin and Barker are big, brave, full-bodied middleweights, and he is breaking these guys down. He may not look perfect. He may not look untouchable over the first 4 or 5 rounds, but, man, by the middle rounds, he's made necessary adjustments, technically speaking, and then he starts to beat these guys up, and he really beats big guys up. So, it's scary to think what he would do to somebody who's probably physically smaller than him, but also younger and certainly not as mature as he is. Canelo's got great experience for a 21-year-old, for a 22-year-old.
Right.
Awesome experience. experience, 41 professional fights. He's been fighting since he was 15. But he doesn't have that world-class, elite-level experience that Sergio Martinez has. And Martinez is so athletic and such a smart boxer, but at the same time, such a punishing athletic force. I think that they would be smart to wait until he turns 40 at least.
Call me crazy. I think Sergio is going to get one big payday at some point. I think he's going to get one big fight before he's out. I hope he does too. Final,
he's a great guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guy.
I mean,
really,
just seeing that thing that he did for the girl in Connecticut, the bullying campaign. I mean,
yeah.
You can.
And he's a wonderful, humble, friendly person. I mean, he trains in Oxnard, so I'll go and watch him work out. And man, he's so approachable. If this guy spoke English,
right,
he would be very popular.
Right,
he really would.
And that's probably one thing that's also helped Cotto get to number 3 in terms of the drawing power is the fact that he now
it helped that he learned English.
Right, can speak English. So
it does help.
Final question, Doug. Hope we can do this much more in the future. This has been a void in my life not having you on the podcast. But let me ask you. Let me ask you this. Let's say Mayweather and Pacquiao at some point go away because Father Time's eventually going to call them to get out of the game. Who becomes that next big thing? Who becomes the drawing power of boxing? Because I was thinking about that today. Canelo,
if he's match right, if they don't rush him, if Golden Boy Promotions and his trainer management team, if they resist the temptation to rush this kid, if they listen to the old timers like Don Shargan, who has taken a liking to Canelo and advises Golden Boy Promotions, and Shargan has forgotten more about this sport than 99.99999% of us will ever learn. If they listen to him and take it slowly with this kid, and continue to develop him until he's about 23, maybe 24, and then let him out, then take the training wheels off, then let him roll. I think Canelo can be huge because he's already at age 21, and just really 1 year of being on HBO's regular airwaves. He's already very popular. He already is a bona fide ticket seller, at least on the West Coast.
But see, I would counter that too by saying I don't think Golden Boy necessarily needs to take it Chavez slow. If you get what I'm saying.
No, they don't. They got
right.
They got a better talent.
Right.
Canelo's a better athletic talent. He's a more versatile fighter than Chavez. And I know this. This is something I can tell you as an insider, somebody who watches these guys train, has followed them for a long time, and they both train out here in Southern California. Chavez trains at the Rockford Gym in Hollywood. Canelo has been training in Big Bear, California since early last year. I go and I see these guys. Canelo works harder. Canelo spars with tougher guys. Canelo challenges himself in the gym. I can tell anyone who listens to this, man, Canelo is not a joke. He's not hyped. He doesn't look at himself like a star. He treats himself the way any other young, hungry fighter treats himself. He's hungry. He wants to get better. So they got a stud
right.
in Alvarez. They don't have to move him. They don't have to be that careful. They don't have to be as careful as Top Rank has been with Chavez Jr.
I can't wait till Top Rank puts Chavez Jr. in with somebody.
They can't go to the Lions.
Right.
You think it's got to happen sometime. I mean, you know what? Andy Lee, who he fights next month, is not a pushover. That fight could be interesting. What saves Junior is that he's just a giant. He's a cruiserweight who fights at middleweight.
Right. I think what they're going to do is
it does. And you know what? He can take a shot. At the end of the day, he's a big dude who can take a shot. So he's not an easy fighter. I think he's a legitimate middleweight contender, but he's not. I don't think he's as talented as Canelo.
Yeah, I see at some point Chavez Jr. I see Bob Arum feeding him Margarito because I think Tony's pretty much shot at this point.
That's what's next. And you know what? Tony will play up that villain role, and he will make one last payday. I mean, he's already. Margarito has already made enough from the Pacquiao and Cotto pay-per-views. He could retire comfortably.
Right.
The guy doesn't live extravagantly. Doesn't live in an expensive area of the world, so. He's already set, but one more payday, sure. Tony would love that.
And one other guy, and we'll close on this, that I think could be up there too. I just don't know how good his weight class is in terms of the future. Broner's got a mouth to him, and he's got some skill.
Yeah, he does. He's an immense talent. He really made a believer out of me with his domination of Eloy Perez in February. And he has charisma. He is sort of a natural in interviews and on television, and it helps that he has an exciting style. And he's in a weight class where there's just a lot of talent. There's a lot of talent at 130. There's a lot of talent at 135, and there's a lot of talent at 140. And he has the kind of frame and body to where he can put on that weight, go all the way up to junior welterweight, and still be just as effective as he is at junior lightweight. So he's got dance partners, and that's what counts. I mean, imagine how big a 140-pound fight would be between Adrian Broner and somebody like Brandon Rios, who also talks the talk and is also an exciting fighter. I mean, that would be huge. It would do well. So, I mean, and Broner's not afraid to fight anybody. He'll fight tough guys. So
he
is somebody who could emerge as at the very least, I don't know about pay-per-view star, but at least he could be like a real solid HBO player who does good ratings.
We just need top-ranking Golden Boy to get along at some point.
Absolutely.
So anyway.
Can't we all just get along?
Well, Doug, I appreciate it. We'll talk to you before Pacquiao and Bradley, and as always, thanks for your time.
Anytime, Bob.